maybe we shift to the Pam Bondi hearing because we saw her
Yeah, I was
say
going to say
things that made me laugh out loud. Our government does not hold the ruling class criminals accountable for their crimes. We've decided we don't have an appetite for it. We don't have an interest in it. And God forbid somebody accuses us of being political. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to hold the ruling class criminals accountable.
That does dovetail nicely into what's also happening as Israel and Hamas have worked out their arrangement. The United States Senate and I guess Trump are working out their arrangement on his nominees. In particular, you had Pete Hegseth a few days ago sitting in front of the committee, which was actually it was embarrassingly laughable watching that unfold. And, I still don't think Democrats know how to do politics, and it was very evident. And I know that's not a political environment, but it is in a very highly charged setting where there was a lot to go after that guy on other than his affairs and trying to prove, you're a Christian, but this is what you did. And of course, Hegseth talking about, look, I'm never, going to sit here and judge another man's Christianity and in his walk with Christ. But I've always, since I was a young kid, had a problem with people who pull that card out and start playing that shit when they get in trouble. And publicly like that, the way he did. I'm my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm so grateful you be. I'm like, anyway, that's why.
Michael, you know how many defendants I prosecuted who
right? I was going to ask you, right?
Never went to church, as best we could tell from investigating the case and talking with their friends and family member. But what do they have sitting on that counsel table right next to them as that jury is deciding whether the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Oh, they got that Bible.
They got that Bible right there. So you had that display where every time the Democrats will level up the charges, the Republicans came out with letters of reference for Hegseth. He's going to get confirmed. We knew that 2 weeks ago when John Thune told Donald Trump, which was then secretly revealed, that he had the votes. So that's done. Now we're with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida. What's your thought as you listen to her testimony this morning roll out? When we came in, folks, my brother was over here chuckling about that. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say about what he heard.
Yeah. And first of all, the Hegseth thing, I was active duty Army for 6.5 years before I was honorably discharged, and I joined the Department of Justice for my entire career. And I mourn for the men and women in uniform who choose that calling and who are willing to put their life on the line to protect us all. They're going to be headed up by a guy like Pete Hegseth. That is, it does a disservice to our service members, period. But moving on to Bondi, I was watching the hearings, and it's just kind of like another version of Bill Barr, in my opinion. And here are some of the things she said that really concerned me. And this is going to sort of dovetail with my observation that we don't hold the ruling class criminals accountable. When Bill Barr lied under examination by then Senator Kamala Harris, and actually said, when Kamala Harris, what a good cross-examiner she is, asked him, did anybody at the White House suggest you should open an investigation on someone? He knew that the truthful answer, I assume, based on his ultimate answer, was of course. What did he do? He hemmed and he hawed and he paused and he grappled
trying to figure out what's the meaning of the word is.
You grapple with the word suggested. And then he ultimately did not want to answer the question truthfully. So you know what his answer was? I don't know. Michael, take it from this old career prosecutor. I don't know is not a perjury-proof answer. I'm not saying we bring a slew of perjury charges or criminal cases because, frankly, I put people in the grand jury and on the witness stand in trials every day. And unfortunately, people lie a lot, and we don't have the bandwidth to prosecute them all for perjury. But when you lie to Congress, it's technically called a 1001 violation. It violates federal law 18 USC 1001, providing a false statement to Congress. Perjury, an answer like, I don't know, is not perjury proof. All you need to do is investigate whether he knew or not. And I'm betting you could find half a dozen people who said, yeah, Donald Trump told him to investigate somebody. Yeah. And there is the perjury charge, the 1001 charge, but we don't hold the ruling class criminals accountable. Therefore, we get the government that we get. Pam Bondi did some of that. Here is some of what she said. And you can't listen to this without chuckling. First of all, she wouldn't say Joe Biden won the election.
Yeah.
Still an election denier. All she would say is Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Yeah, but did he win the election legitimately? She wouldn't answer that question. And she's going to be the next attorney general. She was then asked, well, you heard the tape of Donald Trump asking Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, just find me 11,780 votes and declare me the winner. I haven't heard that tape.
Oh, see, that's the bullshit meter goes off the charts.
It gets better, Michael. Well, you've heard Donald Trump say and post that the J6 defendants who were convicted are hostages and patriots. I'm not familiar with those statements. Come on now. Well, you know, Kash Patel has an enemies list. Oh, I didn't. You didn't even crack open his book, Government Gangsters, where he has 60 people on his deep state list, which the Washington Post has correctly called an enemies list. Oh, I'm not familiar. Listen, you are perhaps, if any of this is true, I don't know if she's lying or not. If any of this is true, you're going to be the least informed attorney general in the history of the United States. And then forever, the Republicans are blathering on. Guys like Chuck Grassley. It's so embarrassing for our nation. He was blathering on about how DOJ has been weaponized against the Republicans and blah, blah, blah. And by the end of it, I'm like, man, maybe we need to stop calling it gaslighting and start calling it grass lighting, because that was absurd. It was absurd. Here is a question I would have asked Pam Bondi, because they were railing against how you don't go after your political opponents. You don't use the Department of Justice to go after your political opponents.
Right.
What if your political opponents are committing crimes? Do they get a pass because they have this magical label, political opponent? No, you go after them without fear or favor. You follow the facts, you apply the law, and you put their stinking ass in jail if they violated our nation's laws.
Not
it's like a mantra. You don't go after your political opponents. If they're out there doing crime, yes, you do. And you let the criticism come. That's what I did my whole career. I prosecuted people. Every time I made a prosecutorial decision, Michael, I made somebody really unhappy.
Yeah.
The defendant, the defendant's family, the defendant's criminal associates, maybe the community, or if I declined to bring a charge, and I told my prosecutors, we are never more vital in our role as prosecutors as when we are declining to bring a charge because the evidence is not there. Yeah. You know who I made unhappy? The victim's family, the community, right? So the fact that my decisions were going to make somebody unhappy was very freeing to me. I was unburdened by those collateral concerns. And I said, I'm going to follow the facts and the law, regardless of who did the crime.
Glenn, so you've got all this experience. You've watched the evolution of our Supreme Court. You've watched the devolution of our judiciary with the likes of Eileen Cannon, with whom I have zero regard. What do you think? What's your? I don't want to put it in terms of your fear and all that, but your 30 years of experience looking at the system, but more importantly, working in it. What do you see evolving with a Justice Department run by Pamela Bondi, an FBI run by Kash Patel, a national security apparatus potentially run by a Tulsi Gabbard or others in that space if she doesn't get confirmed, Marco Rubio at state seems to be a reasonable choice, but is Marco going to be sycophantic to Trump as he's been, or is he going to find himself a little bit more freed? I suspect more the former than the latter. What do you see the next couple of years looking like? And I start with what will happen on January 20th. While we're doing our festivities on the Capitol Hill, while they're doing all of that, down Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, there will be over 250 executive orders put in place that will begin to transform the operations of our federal government, particularly in areas of border security, the use of our military to enforce border laws. What do you, as a prosecutor, glean from all of that? And do you think that there are people still inside the building that will say no?
There are 2.1 million civil servants, federal government employees, and they actually have a healthy dose of protections as civil servants. I know, I testified before Congress on Project 2025, and my mission in my testimony was talk about the dangers of a Department of Justice whose independence was snuffed out by Donald Trump trying to flood the department with flunkies and lapdogs and sycophants, because that's an extraordinary danger. Really, the rule of law, Michael, not just because I'm a rule of law guy, but the rule of law is really the only thing that has the potential to keep our republic up and running. And if Donald Trump can completely corrupt and weaponize the Department of Justice, then the only point of light I can find there is the federal trial judiciary, not only in Washington, D.C., where any of Donald Trump's vindictive prosecutions that he directs his Department of Justice to bring against Liz Cheney or Jack Smith or fill in the blank with anybody on the enemies list. The federal court judges in Washington, D.C., people that I not only practiced before, but that I served as a prosecutor with, some that I supervised, some that I tried cases with, murder and RICO cases. I just happened to have the good fortune to know the federal trial court judges extraordinarily well, many of them. They will be the bulwark against Donald Trump's vindictive, lawless, baseless prosecutions if he chooses to bring them, if he chooses to direct his Department of Justice to bring them. Because these are people who are loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law, and they will not let a corrupt Department of Justice cram vindictive prosecutions down the throats of Donald Trump's enemies. Of that, I am confident. Now, don't ask me what happens when it gets all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, but
take our points of light where we can.
Well, why what you just said is important. It really is a reminder of what the Project 2025 concerns were. Why many of us, yourself included, were warning people about what was being laid out in Project 2025. Why the evisceration of the federal bureaucracy was an important feature of Project 2025, because then you begin to emasculate the very efforts that you're talking about. People inside the building who would otherwise say, wait a minute, time out. We can't do that. This is that. There's no basis for bringing charges. There's no basis for an investigation. There's no basis for ruining this person's life through the judicial process. Those people stripped out of the system, suddenly that whole system now changes. And that, I think, is one of the bigger concerns. So I think in the main, you're right that those protections, those guardrails are there in the forms of people whose names you don't know, and who are, they give the full meaning to the word career in terms of their service to the country. In those particular places, but we should also be aware that they are the target.
Yeah, and when it comes to the trial court judges nationwide, remember when Donald Trump's cruddy lawyers attacked the 2020 election results, all of the judges, right, in 60 to 65 cases that were brought challenging the election's results, all of the judges, including the Trump-appointed judges, held strong and said, go away, Rudy and Sidney and the rest of you.
Right.
Some of these folks now being disbarred for that litigation.
There's that.
Not Powell, but Giuliani has been disbarred twice over, New York and DC. So they held strong, right? So now let me back into answering your original question. What happens when Donald Trump takes office on January 20th and issues 250 executive orders? Here's another point of light. It is the incompetence of the people Donald Trump is surrounding himself with. Incompetence, sometimes sort of lapsing into imbecility, right? What did Donald Trump do within 7 days of taking office the first time around? He issued the hateful Muslim ban. What happened? Went right to court, got shot down. So he took a step back and tried to redraft it, clean it up, make it palatable to the courts and the Constitution, struck down the second time, retooled it, struck down the third time. Dude finally got one that eked through the court system as not being unconstitutional, but by then it was so watered down, it didn't have as sort of damaging an impact as it could have had. You want to talk points of light? So when I talk about the incompetence of the people he surrounds himself with, every dang one of his executive orders, if there's a legitimate case to be brought against the lawfulness and the constitutionality of it, we have so many organizations around the country ready to bring those suits. Plus, we have governors and state attorneys general ready to protect their citizens against Donald Trump's abuse and overreach and illegality in those executive orders. The courts will be flooded, as well they should, as long as they are legitimate suits brought challenging those executive orders. Donald Trump is going to be outmatched on the lawyering front every minute of every day in every courtroom. And I take that as a point of light. You want to fight? Bring it on.